I'm sorry I don't have a more formal introduction for Dr. Friedman. Thankfully, our community already knows her and she already knows us. I have to say, when we were going over the event planning, one of the most amazing things was right away, she was like, oh yeah, I was there last year. How are so-and-so doing? And so-and-so remembering everybody's names, what they're up to in life. So you have an amazing knowledge of the people in this community, a great understanding from just one visit of us. So I'm looking forward to you leading all of us in this conversation.
Well, thank you.
For sure.
Before she starts, could everybody mute though? So we don't have all that background.
Great advice. Everybody mute until you're about to speak up, please.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead, right, Rabbi? Okay, so I'm really delighted to be back. It's kind of funny, here I am sitting in my daughter's bedroom, 72nd and Riverside, saying be back with the lovely community at Stanton Street that welcomed me and Benji last year. I know it was before Purim. It was sometime, I think, in February. And we had just the most wonderful Shabbos with you. If those of you who were there, remember we did that role play? That was really fun. And then we went with Paul and Phyllis on an art walk, of course, around the neighborhood, which was really fantastic. We would have come, I think, to the gala, which was right before Purim, but we were going to Australia right after Purim. That night we left stupidly, I can't believe it, for Australia. And I wrote in my few Shalach Manas some stupid limerick about the virus. When I think now, how like ignorant I was, and even to get on that plane was crazy. But we did come back 5 days later, since the entire the whole trip was shutting down, and we were getting kind of concerned about coming back. And needless to say, all of our lives have been different since then. Now, I'm mindful that some people on this call, I guess it's sort of two groups. Obviously, the Stanton Street Kehillah, and then also some friends from Lake Wabika in Connecticut who might not know the Stanton Street people. So what I want to do tonight, so before you speak, and I really hope that everybody is going to speak, that you just introduce yourself, and sort of say where you're from, because I think it'd be really nice. I mean, obviously, it's a like-minded group. I want to start off by saying that tomorrow night is obviously Hanukkah, and we all know that we light Hanukkah candles from 1 to 8. We add rather than starting at 8 and subtracting and going down to 1. And I would like that to be kind of the theme of, we follow Hillel rather than Shammai. I would like that to be kind of the theme of tonight's gathering, where we add. I guess we are 18 altogether. Oh, perfect. Hi, see, great. That we add our collective wisdom, because none of us has the answer, or whatever, the wrap on the struggle of this past, really it's going into, well, certainly 3/4 of a year. And what's been hard about the pandemic, how we've coped as individuals, as couples, as families, as a community. Some people are solo, some people have partners, some people could easily move their work to remote and could Zoom. Other people couldn't. I'm very mindful. Let me just start from the basics. I don't know how people here, I know some of you obviously more than others from the summer at Lake Wabika, but it's a little while since then. I don't know who's been affected health-wise. Have people in this our gathering? Some of you have had COVID. Certainly, we know people who have had COVID. We may know people who died from COVID, or who were profoundly affected physically or financially. And certainly, we've all been worried about it. We've all taken whatever our personal level of precautions, of distancing, of social isolation, or whatever you want to call it. Our lives have all been profoundly affected by the health implications, the physical and the mental health implications of what this last 3/4 of a year has been about. I also want to acknowledge the enormous financial impact on people. Like I was starting to say before, some of us, and I would say, I include myself in this as a psychiatrist, have been fortunate that I could move my work really entirely to Zoom. And I would say that's probably pretty true of most white collar type of folks. But for people who, are essential workers who interact or whatever, who's like either you have to, it's much more dangerous to go to your job, or you've lost your job, or there's an impact on your economics. And I really want to make room for that. And I certainly think that if we're fortunate to not be personally impacted, we're certainly aware of the enormous impact on everything from the JCC to your little favorite community theater, to your local restaurant, to the person who cut your hair, like whatever it is, like maybe David, that's why you have long hair, because we were joking before, but everything, the impact is broad and deep, for so many different people. And I think most of all, those things are kind of are acute and maybe specific depending on your personal situation. If you're a dentist, or you're a like you're there in people's mouths, you're a dental technician, whatever, like you are right there, with air particles coming in, you have to think about that every day. But I think something that's different from person to person. But something that we have all had to cope with is whatever degree of loneliness, I think, and isolation, and to some degree, a different experience of time, and of community. And maybe, it was kind of fascinating. I was totally, just thought about this now. I was totally fascinated about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. I think it was the Shabbos, well, whatever, maybe it was Friday or Saturday, but the Times had an article on a topic that I've always been fascinated by. And I looked up the website Raven's Bread on hermits, the newsletter for hermits. Anybody else notice that besides me? I've always been interested in hermits, and yay, Margie, the lives of hermits. Like how do they would probably have a lot to teach us about how to cope, with isolation, and with how do you use time? How do you manage when you're by yourself for longer periods of time, or maybe you're with one person or a few people. I mean, certainly our experience of being with people is very different. If you have a partner or a housemate or people that you live with, you're probably with them a lot more than you were in the past, which can have its upside and it can have its challenges. I think that if people are solo and they have looked forward to getting nourished in terms of social contact by whatever is certainly shul is a big thing. Now I know Stanton Street has been meeting more recently on Shabbos morning, but certainly, our social flow has been interrupted. So what I wanted to do was really, after opening this up, is to facilitate for us to share, for us to add candle to candle. And if we get like way past, 8 or 18, that's okay too. What people's experiences have been and what they have found that's helped them. What has helped you? It could be a very small thing, or it could be something big. I mean, we all read the same media. We all know that Jane Brody tells us to have a schedule, to get outside every day or as often as possible, to do some degree of exercise, to do some degree of like maybe cultivate a project that you had always wanted to do but never did do. So, I mean, I don't think the eight says the advice about what to do. I think we all read the same, more or less the same stuff. And if we read different stuff, they're all repeating each other anyway. So I'd like us to be able to share like what has worked and what hasn't worked. Like, what did you try that didn't work for you and that you would feel comfortable sharing with the group? Because you know what? I mean, it's December, whatever it is, 9th. And the first vaccines are rolling into New York, hopefully next week. But I don't think, maybe some of us are going to get them in the next month or 2 months, but a bunch of us are not. And I think that this is going to be continuing for a good chunk of time longer. And we also know that it's likely to be a grim time. And hopefully New York, we learned early and hard. And when I go outside, I mean, virtually everybody is masked. Like, I mean, a homeless guy isn't masked. Like, that's about it on the Upper West Side. But Hopefully we will not see what we saw last March or April, but we do know that we're going into a rougher time. So even though I hope that the end is in sight, we know that vaccines are, coming down the pike. We probably have a good couple of months to go. So I think that sharing what's worked and what hasn't worked would really be helpful. So I want to open it up. I am willing to share my own thing too, but I've already talked plenty. So I'll function as a facilitator and just like, raise your hand. Yeah, I mean, I see like the box is lit around Lindy. Do you want to say something, Lindy? Or no, or is the box just lit? So just unmute yourself when you're going to talk. Mute yourself when you're not, when you're back, because it just background noise is distracting. And just say who you are, and whether you're from Stanton Street. If you want to say 5 words about yourself, that's good too. But let's share what's worked and what hasn't worked.
Okay, I can do that. I'm Lindy, and I do go to Stanton Street as well as, and I spend a tremendous amount of time on the best thing is, and the hardest thing is, you sit, which is a real hard thing for me because I don't sit well. But in the interim, I have connected with family all over the world, and I have connected to groups that are teaching all over the world. And I am able to pick different services to go on where I know all these different people. And for me, I've connected to studies that I used to do when I moved here from California. Now they are doing it on Zoom. And I mean, I've been able to connect. So I've stayed in touch with friends. And I not only have I done that, I have connected people from all over the world that didn't know each other through me. And we've done networking and studies and different things like that. So I've connected my old friends and my longtime friends with 9 new friends, and that has worked. And
Right.
being a part of the family that, you would make a phone call to, now you can actually see, and more people can connect. That's a good thing. That's I'm fine. I'm happy with that, at least. I mean, there's a pain just
I just want to say it's okay if there's a silver lining to your COVID experience. Like if you did something during this time that you wouldn't have done before, like Lindy is sharing that this was a time of connection that maybe wouldn't have happened in busy lives, that people got connected. That's a beautiful thing. And it doesn't mean that other people didn't have a hard time or you didn't have a hard time, but it's fine to have a silver lining too. That would be kind of great.
It isn't that it isn't that I didn't have a hard time, and I'm not going to take up all my space, and I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm going, speaking of Zoom, I have a class at 7:30. But because it's not such a great thing, I've tried to make the best of it, and yeah, work is a different issue. Work has gone down to like too many of us. Work has gone down to this much from this.
Thank you. Okay.
That's all. But yeah, okay, I'm done.
Okay. Joel, and then Cressel, and then the rabbi. Joel.
Hi, I feel like I'm in 2 different worlds.
Okay.
2 days a week, I work at a hospital, 3 days a week at home. So I stay in my apartment, and I'm single, so I'm by myself.
What kind of work do you do in the hospital? You can just share that?
Mental health clinic, I'm a psychotherapist.
Okay.
But then 2 days a week, I go to the hospital. It's on Staten Island, taking the Staten Island ferry.
Wow.
I try and sit outside, but about there's about 20% of people, including the police officers, who don't wear masks sometimes. It's a political statement. And then on Staten Island, I go for walks. I try and stay away from people. A lot of people are not wearing masks. And then I see some clients, and they have to wear masks, but the stories they tell, it's like all day. And then coming back to Manhattan, like the rest, and I'm on the phone a lot. I've connected with relatives that basically my family didn't talk about. So, so people in different countries, and that's been very, very positive. People who are curious, we're born Jewish with a hyphen, but don't really know much about it, some of them. But they're very curious about the different shuls that I connect with online. And so that's, and including Stanton Street. But so
your experience has been a bit similar to Lindy's in using some of this time to connect up with people who were not connected before.
Yeah, and it's, that part is great, is abs.
Right, right. I mean, I get the other part that is quite demanding, but I want to honor both of them. Thank you.
Excuse me, but Joel, I also have one job every 3 weeks on Staten Island, Grant City. So also, like, I take the bus to the ferry, take the ferry outside, we sit to the train, to the back and back. And you are right. I do see a combination of everything.
Okay, so that's
to have a warm coat and warm hat when you do that.
And I think that's a good thing. I appreciate that you two have brought this in. Like, just what is our current day experience of safety, respect, out there in the world on the street with COVID. Cressel, I think you were going to be next.
Can I just
Maybe the rabbi should go before me. Doesn't seem respectful.
I just want to address something that Joel said, if I
Okay.
may. So Joel, we kind of know each other. We sat across the table, but you don't know that I spent, like, I guess 5 years. I lived in Staten Island, and many years ago. We're starting like 1968, 1969. But anyway, there's something about taking the ferry that, if you can get your head into it, it is so romantic. It is so beautiful. And I hear for you, okay, it's a job, you got to get there and this and that, and the people are there, maybe not wearing a mask, whatever, but think of it as you are so blessed to ride the Staten Island ferry. I mean, there are poems about it,
The most beautiful harbor in the world. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, really. It's like, wow.
Okay, now, you know what? We could do odes to the Staten Island ferry, and I could get into this too. And that's great. We can come back to that. But I do want to come back to, I know that Cressel, did I pronounce that right? And then the rabbi. Please go ahead, Cressel.
Okay, good. So I'm Cressel. I'm new to Stanton Street, new to Manhattan.
Oh.
This is my mom. She has dementia.
Okay.
So she was living in assisted living for 5 years, and we weren't allowed to visit her because of COVID. And because of that, I had to, we made this change. And that was, several months in coming, as you might imagine, that I left my home in Muncie and I've moved in with her. And there's a lot to say just about that.
Wow.
Because I have to think about keeping her safe. And it's a change. But I lived in Muncie. When I was there, in March, when we were all on lockdown, I have to admit, I kind of liked it a lot, because number one, my job was really boring. I'm a secretary. And number two, I've been working on a novel since October of last year. And so now I had an excuse to work on my novel. Part of the reason that I'm doing this now is my sister, in supporting me working on it, figured we could manage our lives so that I'm taking care of mom and writing that, and that's my job. But none of this would happen if mom didn't have significant savings, thank God. I'm blessed in so many ways. My husband even had COVID and didn't have it that bad. My kids didn't catch it. I didn't catch it. We've been blessed in so many ways. So that's my story.
That is one dense nugget of life experience. I mean, that's really amazing. And it's sort of like, this is like Dayenu. If this didn't happen, it would be, this happened, it would be enough. And look at it. Here you have like 18 potential readers of your novel. Because when we hear
this particular one, I don't know, but the next one, maybe we'll see.
Whoa.
This one's fanfic. That's why.
Well, I'm sorry, it's what?
It's fanfic.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that's like kind of niche.
Well, I think it's lovely to have your mom with us, and it's really very touching, and just want to honor your presence here, taking care of your mom and your sister supporting you and your husband and your kids, and you're using this time to be creative, which I think is really just fantastic. Rabbi Stoller, I think you had your hand up a long time ago, so go ahead.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much, Crystal, for sharing that. I didn't know any of that, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm so glad for everybody who's here. I think it's beautiful that everyone's found some amount of silver lining so far, and there definitely are pros and cons of this experience for me and Shoshana. But I do want to put on the table something that I'm not sure there's a silver lining, but something that's been harder for both me and Shoshana is just the general heightened sense of anxiety, more or less since this started. And it just, it affects everything everything's a little bit on edge. Every unexpected phone call is a little more scary, and it definitely just seeps into the day to day. So there's the general tools for coping with anxiety that, nothing special to do, but just to put on the table, that's definitely been a big part of our experience.
Well, I think putting it on the table, I'm just going to share something. I mean, from a patient that I saw today. So this is an extremely lovely person who I hadn't seen in a couple of months. And she called me panicking that she is in day 9 or something of COVID, and she's doing okay. I mean, she's got a bunch of weird neurologic symptoms, but she's panicked beyond the beyond because her mother had a long course of MS and died of MS. And many of the COVID symptoms can seem MS-like. And as much as she knows that she doesn't have MS, it feels like she might. And she can see herself and be in it at the same time. And I think that many of us can have that experience, that I don't know, you pass somebody on the street and they have their mask below their nose, or somebody gets too close to you, or somebody invites you over to come to their house, and you're thinking like, what are they thinking? Or, or somebody doesn't want to stand close to you, and you think like, wait, do they think I'm the leper? Like, there's lots of different levels of anxiety. And that like taking your own pulse of like, am I overreacting? Should I do what's comfortable for me? Is this, over the top? Like, there's certainly like a lot of differences, let's say in couples or in families. I mean, I would say that prior to Rosh Hashanah and Thanksgiving, I got a lot of calls like from rabbis. The two things that they were concerned about mediating were different COVID levels of COVID protectiveness and political discussion. And sometimes the two intersected, sometimes they don't. But that the sense of how careful somebody wants to be about COVID, or how non-restrictive, can really be a big wedge. So I thank you for bringing that up. People don't have to continue this theme. I mean, you can talk about the Staten Island Fair if you want to, or you can bring up something completely different. But people who haven't spoken, I invite you to, to comment on any aspect of this that's been, Ellen Goldstein, and then Jeff. You have to unmute yourself, Ellen.
Yeah. Okay, hi, I'm Ellen Goldstein. I know the Lake Wabiga community, and I know, of course, Phyllis and Paul. And my experience with COVID has been, I guess, similar to so many others. The isolation was very difficult. We have a large family, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and spending every holiday, just the two of us, was the first time for the two of us since we're born. And we are married almost 60 years. So that was quite an unusual thing, which had some very nice moments, but it was really difficult watching the first bris on Zoom. This was back in March. And it was right after the lockdown. And there have been several babies born that we haven't been to see because we can't. In other respects, the children have come to visit, one at a time, sitting outside, etc. And, that's kind of difficult for us to deal with, but we've developed a way of just being together in this private universe that we have right now. And a bigger problem was, especially at the beginning, all the deaths from COVID, not being able to be part of a funeral, to make the kind of shiva call that we normally make to offer comfort. And we found difficulties with that. But the other aspect was all the fascinating lectures and webinars that are available. I mean, I can go to like a yoga or a Tai Chi class almost every day, sometimes twice. all the university museums are offering fabulous programming. So that's been exciting. And there's lots of shiurim to begin. And we're privileged to benefit from a lot of various rabbis offering shiurim during the week, you know, on webinars. So that's been a good thing. So it's been like everything in life, good and bad.
Yeah.
And of course, we're very grateful that no one very close to us has been stricken with this, you know, terrible illness.
Yeah. Thank you, Ellen. Jeff. Oh, you have to unmute.
I'm going to mute myself. Hi, everyone. Well, many of you have said exactly how I feel, but I just want to try to go through the year a little bit. I think that Pesach was the beginning of a very difficult period. The idea of being alone for the Seder. My partner and I were here, but you know, usually I'm away and with a large group of people, and this was it was very difficult. I try to make the best out of it, of course, but that was it. Also, I was very used to going to a morning minyan every day, and that stopped. And then Stanton was closed from March until September. Very difficult personally for me. And I also did not trust other shuls, not their kashrut, but their ventilation and their sanitation. And so I was a little concerned. But then, you know, that's the negative, really. But frankly, I have found this period of isolation. I'm sorry I even use the word isolation, because I feel that it has been a very fruitful time for me. That I believe that I know how to manage my time, and I go to more shiurim today than I have ever done, and you know, deeper into the daf than I've ever done. I have a Hebrew tutor in Israel that I'm with twice a week. I can go on and on. I read a book a week at least. I'm catching up on all these TV shows and series. I belong to several book clubs actually now. So all of these things are part of a genealogical family project, and also writing for that as well. So there's an enormous, and cooking, and I think we all are cooking more than we've ever done, and shopping more to cook. So all of these, I think, are very positive things. And my head is I'm only looking ahead, and I'm looking at that vaccine as the silver bullet. That is what's really going to bring us to another stage in this. And then we'll know a different reality. But I think we will be much more comfortable mentally with that vaccine. And that's the light that I see. And I don't think it's so far away. It may be the spring for most of us. It may be even early summer. I hope it's even earlier. But that's how I look at it. Hopefully that there is going to be a major change here, and life will come back to some kind of new normalcy. It's not going to be the same, but it's going to be normal. I'm muting.
Richard, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, it's interesting. There's a lot of what Jeff just said. Jeff is a very close friend. So a lot of what he said is echoed with me. Passover, I've traveled with Jeff and a number of other friends for Passover for a number of years. And so suddenly to be with just me and my wife, not that that's the end of the world, was a bit of a shock, to say the least. And also what we did was, in the middle of March, we simply decamped. We have a house up in the Berkshires, and so we were up there until Rosh Hashanah. And so, and you know, it was a bizarre phenomenon, because It's a beautiful place. It's nothing that, you know, it's very comfortable. The Berkshires was relatively safe. Everyone seemed to be adhering to masks, etc. So, and I went about my life. I'm a painter. And so I did a lot of art and did a lot of things on Zoom and all that sort of stuff. So there was a whole piece of my life which was simply, quote, normal, except the outside world, the world that was around me, i.e., our country and the rest of the world, the disaster that was going through and watching the news, et cetera, and kind of like saying to yourself, okay, I shouldn't look at the news today because it's just too much. That kind of almost schizophrenia is been very, very trying, and it really hasn't ended. I've come back to Manhattan. I'm here now, continuing to make art, doing a lot of other things, very, very productive, very creative, but this kind of the sensibility that there's a horror out there. And now, of course, it's increasing. You know, we're now into this second wave, and so it's a toll, and there is the disjunction. I mean, listen, for me, the disjunction started the beginning of April. I watched my daughter get married on Vimco. And it was like, I love her so much, but oh my God, it's like, and I can't be there. So it's a bizarre phenomena of where lots of good things in my life that I'm doing, but there's this background, this echo of we're going through hell. We're going through, I tell people that, you know, you have to chat to somebody in the hardware store, right? It's like we're in a war. This is like what war is like. Now, of course, we're not being bombed, but we're being assaulted. And so that's kind of my experience.
Something that I'm thinking about is, and just kind of jumping off of what Richard was talking about, and there's a lot of creative people in this gathering. I mean, I know some of you, you know, you're kind of being modest about it, like Ellen, you're an artist, and we just heard about a writer, and you know, there's a lot of visual artists here, and I'm sure there are other people. What you just said about we're in a war, we kind of are, and like we're all sort of not holding our breath, we're doing the best we can. I'm wondering if maybe we want to shift a tiny bit to like, when this is over, and God willing, it'll be sooner rather than later, like we can't know now how it's going to affect us. But I can't imagine that next year the painters in this room aren't going to be, something isn't going to be being expressed in the visual. I can't imagine that Kressel's novels or short stories aren't going to have some echo of this, or like how we're going to process once we can, you know, heave that sigh of relief. And like, you know, we're not charging, like it's like the post-trauma thing. And I'm not saying that we're going to be traumatized. I think this is obviously an extremely hardy group here that's coping extraordinarily well. But I wonder how do we want to be different after this? Like if we could be intentional now, like what do we think will be different? Phyllis.
One thing I have noticed is that I've been in Wabika since March. I came up because Lily, our dog, had a vet appointment, and I just never left. And I've noticed lately, okay, one of the things is everyone should have a dog in a pandemic, because, you know, I go out 3 times a day, you know, for long periods of time with the dog. She really gets me out there. And also, if I'm alone, if Paul's like in Maryland or somewhere else, who God knows where he goes, but working, if he's working, no, Lily's a companion. So, you know, if you're living alone, a dog, I would recommend a dog. But what I've noticed about myself is that I don't really have anything pressing to do except maybe some Zoom calls during the day. So when I'm outside, I'm looking at the trees, and I'm seeing how the crowns of the trees are interacting, and I'm watching. I can actually spend more time watching the light change on the lake, and I've never done that. I've always lived my life kind of in a headlong rush towards something, and I think that being able to really look and take it all in has been something really important that I would like to carry forward. And the other thing is, that Paul and I have been doing exercise classes 3 times a week, which would have been really hard to do, I think, if I had to go over to the yoga studio. So I hope to also keep that going. And our studio has basically closed up as a studio and is planning to do Zoom into the future, even when they do have online, I mean, in-person classes. They're going to keep doing Zoom because also we have people participating from all over the world, which is amazing. Like other people have
You're
said.
really underscoring being appreciative, of the now, like noticing nature and getting involved in things that if it took more effort, you probably wouldn't do. I want to invite other people who haven't spoken yet.
I want to piggyback a little bit if I,
Paul, then Margie. Okay.
no, I apologize. No, the sense of community that's resulted from this senior movement yoga class, people you've never met before, you see 3 times a week. And it's a very, very powerful feeling. And the instructor, among other things, does some other activities, one of which is storytelling periodically every couple months. And people tell stories. And it's fascinating, the kind of connection that goes on. And then one thought that was triggered by what Phyllis said was our experience davening together on Yom Kippur, being at the Fishes who are with us tonight in their backyard, watching Lake Wabika turn color. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to be able to go to a Nila service anywhere after that experience. It was extraordinary. Patach lanu sha'ar, beit milat sha'ar. I mean, you hear the words and the world is changing. It's, so there's been a lot. It's been very hard for me. My blessing is my curse. I love people and I get a lot of pleasure interacting with people. And I've had to learn how to control that impulse to connect and to engage. And it has not been easy, to say the least.
Very interesting. Okay, thank you. Margie.
Yeah, mute. Yes, hi. It's interesting at the very beginning, two of my friends died from COVID. Sorry. And I became quite fearful, like really anxious. I couldn't walk out my door. I was really like landlocked because I had such horrible anxiety, which is very unusual for me. But slowly but surely, I took little walks, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, got myself built up. This was back in March, where I could get out and about a little bit. But then all but 1 or 2 of my friends left the city. So and I live alone. So I felt very isolated. But as time went on, I got out a little bit more. I have a car. And, I have a granddaughter who's 17 or 18 now. And she loves dystopic novels. And she's always saying, oh, Grandma, you need to read this. And I'm like, no, I hate dystopic novels. I was an English teacher. I had to even teach them. And I hated them. So I said, I won't read it. I hate it. I hate dystopic novels. Well, now here I was living in dystopia. And I got in the car and I started to go around while things were still closed down. I could be in Far Rockaway in like 23 minutes. It was amazing, and I would park the car right there on the beach. I'm a bird watcher. So I had my binoculars, go watch the birds. It was actually just amazing in this sort of bombed out world. Go by the airport, there's no planes. It was actually like a dystopic novel, but I found it really fascinating. And I'll always have those images with me when we get back to normal and a new look on dystopic novels.
That's something that what you were saying reminded me actually of what Phyllis was saying about looking at the trees, and you're looking at the birds, and you just did like the world's shortest summary of cognitive behavioral therapy I think I've ever heard. Extending what you're scared of by a few minutes and challenging yourself, with a little bit of exposure and being able to handle it. So you ought to patent that. I want to call on people who haven't spoken, because Risa, cornerstone of Stanton Street, a few words from you.
Okay, well, I'm working from home now and I'm loving it. And I try to keep myself busy. I do a lot of Zoom, an awful lot of Zoom. I find that the hardest time for me is basically the weekend when I was really involved with the shul, between 6th Street and Stanton Street. I was busy the whole day on Saturday. Now it's harder, so I'm reading more and I'm sleeping more, and I don't know, I'm just trying to get through this, that's all.
I remember when we came for Shabbos and you were sitting behind me and you were timing yourself to do both shuls, and it was just really amazing, how you kind of run the Lower East Side there. So I have to, Sylvan Capel, I don't think I've ever seen you this quiet this long, so a couple of words.
Amy and I are chuckling at that. Yeah, so, so first of all, if you don't mind, I'm going to repeat a story. I think Amy and I already told you, but I'll repeat it for everyone else's benefit, about a doctor, someone like you, who is contacting his patients by Zoom or phone because they don't come in, and he's speaking to a couple and speaking to the husband. The wife is not on the phone line, but she can hear it from the other room. And the doctor explains to the husband that you can really use this situation, difficult as it is, as an opportunity to renew and deepen your relationship with your spouse, because you can use the time this creates together to find out about how your spouse has changed over the years, and what they want may have changed, and their expectations may have changed, and you can try and you work your way to understanding that and dealing with it. And likewise, your spouse can find out about how you've changed and your desires and expectations have changed, and can work her way towards coming to terms with that. That's all part of plan A. There's a plan A and a plan B, and that's all part of plan A. Meanwhile, the wife yells from the other room, "Tell the doc to cut the crap out. What's plan B?"
Amy, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, well, when Sylvan has explained to people that luckily he and I are on plan A, I sometimes give him a poke and say, "That's what you think."
All right, spoken by mathematician and artist. And other people might not know, but Debbie Eiferman, you're looking to celebrate your 97th birthday soon? And you're just muted, Debbie.
Where's Debbie?
My 98th.
Oh my God. Oh,
Wow.
fabulous.
Wow.
Fabulous. That's wonderful.
Here she is.
Another little beacon.
Well, all I can say is when Irv passed away 8 years ago, I learned how to live alone and how to accommodate my time and maximize it. And to me, if I inject the sense of gratitude each day, each moment, it has a way of wiping away negativity.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. That's just great. We have a little bit of time left, and there's a couple of people who've been here the whole time and haven't spoken. David, do you want to say something? Mute.
I live alone. I live in Chelsea, Manhattan. I have 2 dogs, which keeps me busy going outside at least. And I go to supermarkets and different food stores. I just got a new car, but where am I going to go with it? I don't know.
Far Rockaway.
No idea. I prefer Robert Moses, but it's too far. I do visit some people. I visit my cousin on Long Island, and we meet outside, and we go to a place to eat outside, and we go to the beach outside. And then I go back to her house, and I use the bathroom and leave. So at least I get to see her in person. And I see Lindy in person.
Nice.
I see my kids in person. And my cleaning person. And neighbors. But it's kind of lonely. I haven't caught up in anything that I thought I would do. Just the days go. I watch the news.
Okay.
Watch some TV.
All right, thank you. And the other David Wander.
Sure. Well, I'm teaching on Zoom. I'm an art teacher at a high school. And so I'm on Zoom a lot of the day teaching classes on Zoom. But I'm not as positive actually as most of the people talking here. I'd have to say that I don't know how to explain it, but it seems to me that there's a neshama, there's like a spirit that people have that just doesn't come through on Zoom to me. I mean, I can actually talk to people, I can have long conversations about their art, about their life, how they're doing, but there's something that actually, it's like this little thing that's missing that, that as a New Yorker, I would love to just walk the streets and go into a gallery and feel this, talk to an artist, go to a museum. I'm really looking forward to the time when people can actually interact a little bit more with strangers. That's New York to me.
Yeah.
Where Diana and I are like constantly busy. She's a therapist. She's on the phone all the time. I'm teaching art in the other room. We're on Zoom. You know, we're doing this. I take yoga. I take a guitar lesson from somebody in St. Louis, who's an excellent guitar player, Paul. He's like unbelievable. But there's something about that little, the Pintola, whatever, that's really kind of missing. And actually, I look forward to the day when that'll be back.
Okay, I thank you for giving voice to that. Paul, Ellen, and I forgot, Talia?
Yeah, Al.
Yeah,
So-
Elle. Okay, yeah, Elle. Sorry.
So I think the thing, Ellen and I have been extremely busy during this time. Honestly, people say they're poor, they're lonely. I have two kids with me right now.
Yeah.
They're in the process of redoing their apartments. So they're with us. We're just very busy. I think the thing, however, that I miss the most is I miss shul. I miss Shabbos. I miss the music. My Judaism very much wrapped up in music, tefillah, and nusach, and I really miss going to shul. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur were really flat. So that was a low, but again, I'm with my family, so it wasn't a hardship, but I missed something, and I'm looking forward to when it comes back.
Yeah.
I miss going to clubs, jazz clubs. I love going to jazz clubs. It'll happen. I haven't been to shul since February. That's crazy.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think. I might be losing track of who hasn't spoken. How about Vicky and Larry?
Okay, I'm unmuted. Hi, I'm Vicky Rabinovich-Fish, and I know you guys from beautiful, beautiful, wonderful Wobika. As so many of you has expressed, our summer was a very unique experience, just being together as a chevra and davening together. What you speak of, Paul, that you're missing so much, granted, we didn't do too much singing and it was a speedy service, but we're social beings. We need that sense of davening, not alone, but rather with the kehila. And it was a very wonderful, wonderful summer in that sense. Larry and I were particularly spoiled. I almost don't want to speak about it because unfortunately for our kids, all their camps were canceled. So we had Babi Saba camp and we were blessed, a real bracha, as you say, Debbie, we thank them all the time that we had grandchildren all the time. And then our kids' parents came up most Shabbos, and we had one or the other, sometimes both. It was a wonderful summer. And now we're isolated in Florida, totally isolated. We canceled our Hanukkah trip up to New York because they said we can't come up and they can't come down. And we just are living on the wings of the beautiful summer, waiting, as you say, Paul, for shul to reopen where we can sit with the chevra and daven together and hear the music and feel the sense of prayer together as a kehila. But in the meantime, we know the vaccine is there and it's coming and the light is at the end of the tunnel. And we've hung in so well, isolated for so long. We just have to have emunah and just know it's going to come and it's going to happen soon. And we'll be, Mitzvah Hashem, all back together the way we should as social beings with our family and with our friends. Right now, we seem to have a choice of one or the other. And God willing, we'll get there soon where we can have both.
Yeah, I'm in. Okay. I think that Barbara and Sheldon, I'm not sure if your camera is not on you. Okay, good, because you're there. Okay. I don't think you've spoken at all. Unmute. You have to mute. Unmute.
Okay. We came down in January, Florida, and we haven't been back to New York, to the Lower East Side since, and I do miss my home on the Lower East Side. And mostly, I'm sorry that we haven't gotten a chance to meet Rabbi Stoller in person, and we're looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing our grandchildren, children in New York, and some of you people that we know from Stanton Street. And I enjoy listening to you again, Dr. Friedman. We've heard you a few times and always enjoy your being a part of what you're presenting. So thank you.
Oh, thank
and
you.
we're good. Thank you. Thankfully, we're well, Shelley and I, and we can get out. The weather is beautiful here. We don't go into people's homes. People don't come into our home, but we do go food shopping. So that's our social event. And we can go out walking, and we're busy, and we do getting on a lot of Zoom lectures, which I didn't do before. I didn't go to lectures so much, but I'm loving it, going to, different rabbis that we get to hear. So it's been good.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Somebody on the bottom, is that George Kleiner? Is it Gia? I don't think you've spoken. Maybe you came in a little later, but please.
I don't know what to tell you. There's good things and bad things. I'm 83, but I'm still working at City College.
Whoa.
I luckily don't have to teach large courses.
What do you teach? What's your subject?
But I do laboratory work for computer science.
Okay.
I had a grant for $1.5 million to develop virtual reality for education. However, that's been put on hold. I just hope the money is there when I get back. The biggest problem for me is keeping track of time.
Yes.
There's no rhythm to the day. I get up and I make breakfast, then I run to the computer, but I don't have a sense of when lunchtime is or when dinner is. So sometimes I'll end up eating quite late, like 11 o'clock, which is not good. My wife is in an adult center near my daughter in Rockville, Maryland. I speak to her 3 times a day. When she can figure out her phone, we do WhatsApp video. And it was the first time that we saw each other in a year.
Oh gosh. Wow.
For her, it's much more difficult than it is for me, because at least I have my work to do. There's a lot of learning that I have to do in neuropsychology and neurobiology. And cooking and cleaning are not my thing. But thank God I do have something to sup up my time and my intellect, and so I can keep busy. And I just don't feel alone because I have various contacts. And when I'm trying to catch up or learn stuff, I'm sort of concentrating on that, and I just forget about that I'm stuck.
Fabulous.
And I just can't wait for this thing to be over. My oldest granddaughter lives not far away, so when the weather was nice, she would come over, we would sit in the park. I live in the East River Co-ops, so there's a nice large park. And she's going to a school in London called Adult Art, and we sit and talk about art. I learn about art because I don't know that much. And her sister just made into MIT. So we bought her a 3D printer, and we discussed about how to do it and the various programming systems. So I try to keep busy so I don't think about what the situation I'm in.
Wow.
That's about the best I can do.
8 o'clock.
There's so much creativity and wisdom in this group. I'm really awed and honored to have spent this time with you. I mean, this would be like the greatest dinner party. I'm just sort of thinking, except for the people who are not good cooks. Okay, we'll cook for you, but there's a bunch of I mean, this would just be like the most fabulous dinner party. And I think that we've heard, some real truths, some sadness, some real sadness, and some struggle, with time that we've been through, and also appreciation for maybe the pause to reflect on whatever, what was that bay? Well, anyway, the body of water, the trees. Zoom isn't great, but at least we have Zoom, and we will appreciate. I'm thinking about like what's going to be. How will this stay with me? Will we have less elaborate, less wasteful smachot? Will we be more? I'm hoping that we'll be more thinking about the environment. That will take away an appreciation for the natural world and a reverence for it that will stay with us. That will be kinder to each other. That the sort of harshness of the election period will shift, and we'll be able to listen to each other better. But
Michelle, can I say something?
Yeah, of course, Amy.
Michelle? Hi. I sometimes get to talk too, not just Sylvan. Well, one thing I'm very grateful to Sylvan for in general is normally in normal times, he's great at finding things to do in New York City for us to go. And after I retired, that was especially important for me. And what I've noticed here in Mobika, since we don't get to do those things, he's been great at finding things like opera every night, and or the Folksbiene Theater performances and so on. He's great at finding things online and meetings like this, which help a lot, because if you're a person like I am, I'm a people person. And when I retired, I noticed I missed my students and I missed my teaching so much. What was nice when I retired was we got to travel. And of course now, because of COVID, we don't get to do that. So I especially miss the people too, of my teaching. But I noticed when I go out for walks, how everyone I meet on the walks that I say hello to, or people I just wave to as they pass by in the cars, they are so grateful for any social contact. It's fascinating how grateful people are for social contact. But by the way, one of the things that this whole situation though has made me think of is how Sylvan's parents went through, the Holocaust, and they had to hide for years. And I have such even greater respect for what they managed to do, because they went through so much more. It makes me feel what we've gone through is, negligible compared to what they had to cope with and survived and mentally kept themselves going. It's made me have even more respect for them.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, I thought when you were talking before that wasn't really fair, because that was in response to Sylvan. So sorry I didn't recognize you, for a second go around. But yeah, listen, I hope this evening I have a greater sense of appreciation of being together. I do hope we get to have that big dinner party. And before turning this back over to Rabbi Stoller to say goodnight, I just want to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah, and I look forward to connecting with Stanton Street and the Lake Bobika people, who kind of really, same spirit, unmasked in the not too distant future. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Friedman, for facilitating this. And thank you everybody who came. Hopefully, and this goes without saying, but hopefully tonight's just the start of a conversation, not the end. We now all know a little bit more about what we're all going through and what's been hard so far, about some of the universal experience we all have. And we also now all have resources, be it each other, be it Dr. Friedman, that when things get hard, we know who to reach out to and who to talk to. So let this be the beginning of the conversation, and like many of us expressed, let this end as soon as we can. So thank you all for coming. And I look forward to being there for others. I look forward to you guys being there to help support me throughout the rest of this. So have a good Shabbos, everybody, and thank you all for showing.